Okay, so our last speaker of the workshop is Anirudha Majumdar from Princeton, and he will talk about formal assurances for robot learning.
All right, yeah, thanks very much, Bartolomeo, for the invitation to present and for organizing this great workshop. I'm really excited to be here today. So my group here at Princeton works on enabling robots to operate with formal assurances on performance and on safety in complex environments. And these are some examples of the systems that we've worked with over the past few years, and I'll describe some of them today. So more recently, what we've been thinking about is how we can kind of leverage some of the excitement that's happening around foundation models in robotics. I think many of you might be familiar with some of this progress. So one thing we've seen recently in robotics is the use of large language models and multimodal models, vision language models, for doing things like task specification. So having a human describe a task that you want a robot to do purely via natural language. So for instance, saying, I spilled my Coke on the table, how would you throw it away? And with this instruction, the large language model can generate a plan, so a sequence of steps that can then be executed by the robot. We've also seen kind of really massive strides in perception, so large foundation models that are trained to do things like image segmentation, object detection, and so on. These are trained on kind of massive internet-scale data, gigantic models, many billions of parameters of models, and these have kind of had tangible impacts for robotic perception. And finally, also in the domain of control, so this video is from the Toyota Research Institute, where they were using these diffusion models to do imitation learning for kind of pretty dexterous manipulation tasks. And this is vision-based control, so directly going from pixels to torques. And I think a lot of this progress has been enabled by large-scale data collection efforts, so both robotic-specific data, but also combining that with internet-scale data as well. So I think this is really exciting as a roboticist, and it's a great time to be doing robotics research. But also as a researcher, there's a kind of meta question that arises, which is that excitement around foundation models is at a fever pitch, and how exactly should we kind of do research in this era of foundation models? So I see basically three options as a researcher and someone who leads a research group. So the first one is the simple one, just ignore this progress, continue doing whatever it was that you were doing before this. The second option is kind of drop doing what you were doing previously, jump in and help out with progress. So help out with data collection efforts, make your models larger, come up with better architectures. And the third question, which is maybe a little bit different, is to take a step back and ask, what questions are going to remain even once we scale up our data, once we scale up our models? Even if this kind of dream of foundation models succeeds in some sense, what are the fundamental questions that are not going to go away? And of course, these questions are not mutually exclusive. You can be doing all of these three things at the same time. But the third kind of perspective is the one that I'm going to take today. So ask the question of what problems will remain even once we've scaled up our data and our foundation models. So I think these are some examples of the questions that I don't see going away. So one example is if I download kind of Facebook's latest segmentation model, perception model, use it for my robot, is this perception model actually good enough for the kinds of applications that I want to do, that I want my robot to perform? Or if I use a large language model, some state-of-the-art language model for generating plans, is that language model going to give me accurate plans, or is it going to kind of hallucinate some plan, which will then cause my robot to take some unsafe actions? Or will my large language model interpret the task that I provided accurately, or is it going to come up with some kind of weird interpretation of the task and again cause my robot to do something unsafe? Or is my diffusion policy some gigantic neural network generative policy that I train? Is it stable? Is it going to remain safe? And many other kind of similar questions of this nature. So I think the main theme that I see behind these questions that I don't foresee are going to go away anytime soon, have to do with reliability or trust. So you can think of maybe two kinds of reliability, so different components. So is my perception system accurate? Is my large language model accurate? And so on. and end-to-end reliability. So once I take these different components, I make them interact, I close the loop among them, is my end-to-end system now safe and reliable? And I think the main challenge often arises when we ask these systems that we pre-trained, even on large kind of swaths of internet-scale data, and we kind of deploy them in environments that they were not explicitly trained on, so previously unseen environments. So when we ask these systems to generalize, I think that's when the real challenges come in. And currently, we see these challenges play out in real-world, state-of-the-art autonomous systems. So this is a video that I'll show from Tesla's full self-driving system. This is just from a few months ago. So let me just play the video.
All right, so now we're in my personal Tesla again on FSD 11.4, and this is the cherry on top. We have a do not enter sign with caution tape and a child walking a dog. So let's see how the car performs. So it goes right through, oh God, it goes right through the caution tape. Okay, it does see them. It does see them. Oh my God, it worked! We went in reverse. We went in reverse, guys.
Did we?
We stopped and went in reverse. Interesting, but we still hit the kid.
Still knocked it over.
And wait, it just re-ran over the kid and dog, and just is now
carrying
and
on.
it's now just carrying on. That's insane! Wow.
So as I mentioned, this is not a one-off videos. You can find many similar examples. This guy has a whole YouTube channel curating these examples. If you analyze what went wrong here, so this is likely a perception error. So in this case, the autonomous vehicle actually misses this do not enter sign altogether and just kind of blows past it. And I see this as a failure of generalization. So this perception system was trained on gigantic amounts of data. If you own a FSD system, you're contributing to this data. They've trained on your data likely. But it's failing to generalize to this previously unseen environment, even though it's seen many similar things in the past. And we see this kind of failure of reliability of generalization, not just for autonomous vehicles, but in many other robotics applications as well. If we're trying to put our robots in homes, in offices, or in human-centered environments more broadly, we want them to reliably generalize to previously unseen environments. Okay, so the question that I want to kind of focus on today is how can we provide some formal assurances in the form of statistical guarantees when we ask our systems to generalize to previously unseen environments. And I think from a technical perspective, the main piece that I personally see missing has to do with rigorous uncertainty quantification. And I think it's useful to distinguish between two kinds of uncertainty quantification. So the first one is what I'll call pre-deployment uncertainty. So this is the problem that we as engineers who design the robots often don't know what our robots don't know. So we don't necessarily have some kind of probability of success that we can place on our robots when we deploy them in new environments. And the second one is that our robots often don't know what they don't know. So if they're deployed in a particular environment, how can they decide if the output from their perception system is accurate, or if the large language model came up with a trustworthy plan, and so on. So what I'll present is kind of two recent lines of work. The first one is focused on language models and language-instructed planning. And this was a collaboration with a number of people at Google DeepMind and was presented at Coral, the conference on robot learning last year. And the second one is more focused on uncertainty quantification for perception and is very recent work, and the preprint is on arXiv. So let me start with the first one. So the setup here is that you have a robot and you give it some natural language instruction. So for example, place the bowl in the microwave, please. You have a large language model that you query to come up with some plan for what the robot should do given this instruction. So you give this instruction, you give it a little bit of description of what's in the environment, and you ask the model what it should do. This is GPT 3.5, so it tells you I would pick up the metal bowl, as it's more likely to be able to withstand the heat from the microwave without getting melted or getting damaged. And of course, this is exactly the wrong thing to do. So if you place your metal bowl in a microwave, there's a good chance that you're going to cause a fire. So I would argue that in these kinds of situations, when the robot is faced with ambiguities, in this case there are two possibilities, the metal bowl, the plastic bowl, and when it doesn't have the kind of exact background knowledge to pick between them, the robot should know when it doesn't know and should ask for help from a human or clarification from a human instead of just blindly executing whatever plan your large language model came up with. So in this case, the right thing to do would be to ask the human, which bowl did you mean, the metal bowl or the plastic bowl? And currently, these large language models are not very good at knowing when they don't know. So they suffer from kind of many issues having to do with overconfidence or underconfidence. Here's a really simple example. So there are 3 drawers. Which drawer has the Coke, top, middle, or bottom? So that's the only information that's provided to the language model. And somehow the language model is extremely confident, 93% confident that the Coke is in the bottom drawer. So this is the raw confidence that's coming from the language model, in this case, GPT 3.5. And we see kind of similar issues when you try to score sentences using kind of standard measures of confidence, so for example, perplexity. So here's another example. So there's a Sprite and a can of Coke on the counter, and the instruction is to put a drink in the middle drawer. And let's say you provide the language model with 2 different possible plans. So the first sample plan is I will put the Coke in the middle drawer, and the second one is I will put the can of Coke in the middle drawer. So semantically, these are identical because we've already kind of specified that it's a can of Coke. The only distinction here is the length of the sentence. So if you calculate the perplexity, which is the probability of these sentences, what you'll find is that the language model is much more confident of the first plan. So this is the log probability. This is much higher than the second plan. And this is basically because the second plan is just longer in its description. And this length bias is a kind of really fundamental challenge that we see when we're trying to assess the confidence of these large language models. So in this work, our goal was to do what we call uncertainty alignment, which has 2 components. So the first component is what we call calibrated confidence. So you as a user should be able to specify some target level of success. So let's say 90% success, 95% success. And the robot should figure out when to ask for help and how much help to ask for in order to get to this target level of success. At the same time, we don't want our robots to be constantly pestering humans and to be constantly asking for help. So we also want to minimize the amount of help that the robot seeks. So you can think of this as a constrained optimization problem. So you want to meet this target level of success, but at the same time, you want to minimize the help rate of the robot. So the approach that we took, so we call it no-no, short for know when you don't know. And it has 2 main technical ingredients. So the first one is to pose the problem of planning for a large language model as a multiple choice question answering problem, and this has some nice benefits that I'll describe. And second, this is really the main kind of technical element, is to use conformal prediction, which is a rigorous way to do uncertainty quantification. So let me describe the setup in a bit more detail and describe these 2 technical ingredients. So the setup here is that in every episode, your robot is placed in some environment E. So you can think of this as a partially observable Markov decision process that's initialized to some particular random state. The robot is provided a language instruction, which I'll call L, that corresponds to some goal G. So the goal is some subset of acceptable states in your POMDP. The goal is not explicitly observed by the robot. You only provide it a language instruction, and from that, it needs to infer what your goal is. I'll define this tuple, so 3 things, which is the environment, the language instruction, and the goal. And the main assumption behind all of this work that we're going to make is that there's some unknown distribution D over scenarios. So this could be extremely complicated. This could be the set of all kitchens that you want to place this robot in, a set of all language instructions, and set of all goals. We're going to assume that the scenarios that you want to deploy a robot in are drawn from some complicated but an unknown distribution, but that we have some examples from this distribution. So we're going to assume access to some finite number of training scenarios that we'll use to calibrate the confidence of our large language models. Okay, so with that, let me describe the overall kind of architecture of the human-robot collaboration. So the robot is provided some natural language instruction, like place the bowl in the microwave. It also has some sensors that allow it to see what's in the environment. So the fact that there are two bowls, there are some recycling bins, and so on. And then with these instructions and with this additional information about the environment, the language model comes up with some candidate plans. So we prompt the language model to come up with some potential plans that might satisfy the instruction in this environment. So in this case, it comes up with things like put the plastic bowl in the microwave, put the metal bowl, and so on. And then typically we append another option, option E, which is just none of the above options. We then take all of this information, the instruction, the environment description, the plans, and then we reprompt the language model, and we ask which of these plans is correct or likely to succeed given the instruction that was provided. The language model then scores these different options just using its raw log probability, its raw kind of heuristic confidence score. And this is where conformal prediction comes in. So given these candidate plans, conformal prediction is going to pick some threshold of confidence such that plans that are scored with a threshold that's above, with a score that's above this threshold get placed in this prediction set. So in this case, there are two plans. So put the plastic bowl and put the metal bowl in the microwave that have both a confidence larger than this threshold that comes from conformal prediction. If this prediction set has size 1, then this means that the robot is confident, and the robot simply executes that plan that was selected. If, on the other hand, this prediction set has size larger than 1, as it is in this case, this triggers a call for help. So the language model, the robot, then asks the human to basically disambiguate between these two different options. In this case, the question that the robot comes up with is which bowl, plastic or metal. The human says the plastic one. And then we assume that there's some low-level policy that takes this plan that was ultimately selected and converts that into some actual low-level torques that the robot can then execute. This transitions the system into a new state, and then we kind of repeat this process until the episode ends in success or in failure. So that's the overall architecture. So let me now describe or highlight two of the main kind of technical elements here. So one thing that we've done is we've posed the problem of choosing a plan as a multiple choice question answering problem. So we give it the instruction, we ask it to generate some semantically diverse plans, and then we reprompt the language model and ask it which of these options is correct. And what this is doing is it's reducing the problem of next step prediction and planning to next token prediction. So the language model is just trying to predict A, B, C, D, E. So which of these kind of answers, A, B, C, D, E, is correct given all of this prior context. And this next token prediction, so if you know kind of how these language models are trained, aligns really nicely with the training data and also the training objectives that the LLMs are trained with. The other really kind of nice feature of this approach is that it eliminates the length bias that I previously mentioned. So instead of trying to articulate some confidence on each of these sentences, we're just getting a confidence on the 5 tokens, A, B, C, D, E. And because each of these tokens just has length 1, we're eliminating the length bias that comes from scoring entire sentences. But this still has the issue that these confidences are not necessarily meaningful. These are just the raw confidences that are coming from the language model, and they're not calibrated in any meaningful sense. Just because the language model says 44%, this doesn't mean that the system is going to be successful 44% of the time. This is where conformal prediction comes in. So conformal prediction is a kind of really nice technique that's going to allow us to provide statistical guarantees on task completion. One nice feature of it is that it doesn't assume explicit knowledge of the distribution of examples that are provided to your system. It's really computationally lightweight and easy to use. And in some sense that I'll describe in a bit more detail, it actually improves with the growing capabilities of your foundation model. So as you make your underlying language model better, control prediction benefits from those improvements. And for these benefits, we've kind of seen increasing use of control prediction in many different robotics contexts over the past couple of years. Okay, so I'll provide just a really brief overview of control prediction. I won't go into the details. I'll just describe the inputs to control prediction and the outputs. So control prediction takes as input a pre-trained model. So the pre-trained model has some input x, and it outputs some confidences. So f hat of x is a vector of confidences assigned to k classes. We also assume some calibration data set, so some finite number of examples that are drawn IID from your unknown data generating distribution. And I just want to emphasize here that this distribution that generates your data, that's unknown to us. We just are assuming some finite number of samples. And this uncertainty that the model has is completely heuristic, so it's not calibrated in any frequentist sense. Control prediction takes these two things as input, the pre-trained model, the calibration data, and it produces a new model which outputs a prediction set. So typically, a supervised learning problem, you would output a particular label, a particular output. Here, control prediction will take a particular input x and output a prediction set, so a set of possible labels. And the main result in control prediction is the statistical guarantee. So it says that with probability 1 minus epsilon, so epsilon is some threshold that you as a user get to set. For a new example, so for a new x, this prediction set that is generated will contain the true label with that probability 1 minus epsilon. So just to ground this a bit more, let's say you're doing image classification, so something like ImageNet. So you have some image that you provide your system. Control prediction will take this image and predict some subset, some set of possible labels. And you can think of this set as kind of quantifying the uncertainty that the model has on the different labels. So here it's uncertain among fox, squirrel, gray fox, bucket, and rain barrel. And the guarantee from control prediction is that this set will contain the true label with probability 1 minus epsilon. So in our setting, what we're choosing among are the different plans that were generated by the language model, and we're choosing some subset of these plans using conformal prediction. And if the subset happens to be a singleton, so just one plan, then the robot executes that plan. And otherwise, if it's a non-singleton, then this triggers a call for help or clarification from the human. So that's kind of the overall pipeline here. So as I mentioned, control prediction has this nice statistical guarantee. So these prediction sets that are generated will cover the true label with high probability, where again, epsilon is some threshold that you as a user get to specify. But of course, just this guarantee is trivial. You can always predict the entire set of labels, some gigantic set of labels. You can say, I'm always uncertain, and this will give you the statistical guarantee. So the other thing that control prediction does, or tries to do, is it tries to minimize the average prediction set size. So it tries to make the prediction sets as small as possible on average. So if your f hat, so that's the heuristic notion of uncertainty that your pre-trained model has, if that accurately represents your data generating distribution, then control prediction actually exactly minimizes the average prediction set size. In practice, of course, your f hat is not totally accurate. Maybe it's sort of reasonably accurate. And in this case, control prediction will approximately minimize the average prediction set sizes. These two properties of control prediction directly translate to the two kind of desiderata that I had mentioned. So calibrated confidence comes from this statistical guarantee on coverage. And minimal help comes from the fact that we're minimizing the average prediction set size across different examples. We also have some extensions that we did in our work. So one extension is when you have multiple possible acceptable plans. So there might be different possible things that all lead to success. In this case, you just want your prediction set to contain one acceptable option. That's a relatively straightforward extension. The more technically kind of challenging extension is when you're doing planning in a receding horizon fashion. So you come up with some plan, sequence of steps, you generate some, or you execute some portion of that plan, you replan, and you keep doing this. So we have a novel extension of conformal prediction in this work that addresses this multi-step scenario as well, and also gives you similar coverage guarantees. Question, Andrea?
So, in order to guarantee the one minus epsilon,
yes.
you're saying you can put arbitrarily many labels.
Yeah.
Is there a type of, let's say, assume that you have a limited number of labels. It would be good to have some sort of selection which is not independent. So I'm not saying I'm listing the labels according to the probability and then I put the first K.
Yeah.
But I put some special K that are somehow complementary.
Yeah, that's a great point. So the vanilla kind of version of conformal prediction that I described here just picks a threshold and just says anything above the threshold you should include in your prediction set. There are also more kind of sophisticated ways of choosing these prediction sets that are not simple thresholding. So if you have other parameters, like typically you'll have a temperature parameter that basically describes how diffuse or concentrated your confidences are. There are ways that techniques that also allow you to tune or calibrate those parameters. And there's a lot of kind of really interesting work that's being done recently. So yeah, this version of conformal prediction, I think it was 2005 that it was introduced. Over the last 3 or 4 years, there's been lots of extensions and more interest and things that are similar to what you're describing, where you pick subsets that are not just simple thresholding. Yep. Good, okay. So let me describe some experiments that we did. So again, this was a collaboration with people at Google DeepMind, and the experiments that I'll present are on their robots. So we did a number of experiments, both in simulation and on hardware. So the next slide, I'll describe I'll present the running example that I've been using, which is this kind of bowl in a microwave example.
Hey, robot, could you put the bowl on a small counter in the microwave?
Should I pick up the metal bowl or the plastic bowl?
Pick up the plastic bowl, please.
Here's another example. So put the kettle chips in the landfill. So these are 2 different kinds of chips. So actually here, there's no ambiguity. The prediction set has size 1. The robot simply executes that plan. It puts the kettle chips in the landfill. And these are sped up, I think, 8x, if I remember correctly. Here's another example where there are 2 kinds of ambiguity. So it says put the soda in the drawer, but we don't specify which soda, we don't specify which drawer. And here the language model asks for clarification on both of these points. So which soda, which drawer, we clarify that, and the robot executes that plan. This one is interesting. So this says there's the kettle chips and Red Bull. I ate it already, can you dispose of it? This is an example of what's known as a Winograd schema. So you, as a human, this is kind of trivial for you. So you can say, or you can reason that it must be referring to kettle chips, because you can eat kettle chips. You cannot eat Red Bull. So when you say dispose of it, you must mean dispose of the kettle chips. And actually, the language models these days are good enough to do this kind of common sense reasoning. And so here, the LLM actually doesn't ask for help because it's confident in its reasoning. We also did other experiments. So this one is a tabletop rearrangement setup where we place different food items. We simulate a human that has some particular preferences for healthier kinds of foods. And then given those partially revealed preferences, the robot needs to decide if a new food item is going to be preferred by the human or not. And it needs to sort the different items into the different plates. And when it's kind of not sure about a particular food item, it clarifies with the human. Question, yes? Yeah. Sure.
Have you tried to say metal ball and what's easy
Yeah.
answer? But the vice shoot is the robot must say there's a probability that it will trip it.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Have you tried to ask them?
Yeah, this is a good question. So this depends on the calibration data that you provide. So here we were assuming that we're provided some, typically it's like a few hundred example scenarios where you say, okay, here is a scenario, this is the correct plan. Here's another scenario, this is the correct plan. And conformal prediction takes that calibration data as input. So if you had some particular preferences for what you wanted the robot to do, you can encode those preferences in that calibration data set. So the language model might say, I shouldn't put a metal bowl in the microwave, or it might say, I should put a metal bowl. Whatever it is, you can kind of encode your own individual preferences in the calibration data set by saying, this is the correct plan given this scenario, this is the correct plan given this scenario. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
My point was this, you're considering what robot will know that doesn't know.
Yeah,
That one could don't know this.
yeah.
But robots must know that
Yes. Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, so we're assuming here that the human,
doesn't know that if I keep a metal ball,
yeah. Yeah, so if the human doesn't know that, then we're in trouble. Yeah. Yeah,
even providers don't know that
yeah,
it's good or bad.
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not responsible to answer which.
yeah.
You're free on that, but at the end, the robot is responsible.
Yep. No, I think that's a great point. So here there's this assumption that the human knows. If the human doesn't know and the robot doesn't know, then we are really in trouble. Then no one knows, and so yeah, there's nothing to do. Yep. So that's an assumption in this work. Yep. Good. So yeah, I guess just quantitatively, one thing we found was that using conformal prediction, we were able to get to a desired level of success with less help. So this is showing the average prediction set size. This is showing the human help rate. So we can get to some level of success with less help compared to other baseline methods that use more heuristic notions of confidence. Okay, so that's the kind of part about language instructed planning. So in the remaining amount of time, I think there's about maybe 10, 12 minutes or so. 15 minutes, okay, perfect, yeah. So I'll describe some work we've been doing on uncertainty quantification for perception. So often the bottleneck is not necessarily in planning or this kind of language instructed planning. Often the bottlenecks are really at a kind of lower level, having to do with accurate perception. So that's what I want to focus on in the rest of the minutes that I have here. So the setup here is as follows. So let's say you have a robot that has, again, some camera or some sensor observations. In this case, it's a RGBD camera, so color plus depth. And let's say you have some pre-trained model that's been trained on some large data set that does occupancy prediction. So it takes this point cloud and it predicts where obstacles in the environment are. In this case, we're using a model called 3D-ETR. So this is one of the state-of-the-art models from the past couple of years. It's a large transformer-based model that was trained on large amounts of data. If you just take this pre-trained model directly and you ask it to produce bounding boxes, so this is in our lab here at Princeton, it does a reasonable job. So the orange boxes kind of reasonably cover the true ground truth boxes, which are in blue. But you can see that it actually misses some portions of the obstacles due to occlusions and partial observations. And this is something that we see often. So when you read computer vision papers, it looks like computer vision is solved. You can just kind of take their models, put it on your robot. Everything is going to be good. But when you actually place it on your robot, the actual success rates that you get are much lower than you see published in papers. And part of this is due to the sort of unusual viewpoints that robots have, robot sensors have. So the sensor here is much lower to the ground than a human, like collecting data, let's say. And these changes between deployment time and what the robot was trained on, what the perception system was trained on, these can cause significant issues, which can then lead to downstream failures. So the goal with this work was to take some pre-trained perception system and calibrate it, so to modify the outputs from the pre-trained system in a way that gives you a statistical guarantee on correctness. And again, the main recipe is the same as what we had before. You take your pre-trained perception model, you take some calibration environments where you've annotated where the ground truth obstacles are, you use conformal prediction, and you produce a new model that takes the outputs of the pre-trained model and just inflates the bounding boxes, let's say by a little bit. And the guarantee that you get from conformal prediction is a statistical guarantee on coverage. So with probability 1 minus epsilon, these inflated bounding boxes will cover the true bounding boxes in some new environment. So that sounds kind of relatively simple. Unfortunately, there's a really kind of important technical challenge that we need to address here, which I'm going to call closed loop distribution shift. So the problem is as follows. So let's say you use some distribution of locations, so some distribution of states that you place your robot in, and you use that to calibrate your perception system. So with conformal prediction, you get this nice probabilistic guarantee. So with probability 1 minus epsilon, at least, your inflated bounding boxes, your calibrated perception system is going to be correct or conservative. But what happens when you close the loop? So let's say you take the outputs of your calibrated perception system, you feed them in as inputs to your planner, the robot takes some action, it receives some new sensor observation, and you keep doing this. What happens is that the distribution of states, the distribution of locations that your robot will visit now looks completely different from the distribution of locations that you used to calibrate your perception system. So any statistical guarantee that you had for this distribution of states completely goes out of the window, and there's nothing whatsoever that you can say about the correctness of your calibrated perception system for the actual distribution of states that your robot will encounter. So the way we handle this challenge is by defining a different notion of loss. So you can think of it as a robust perception loss, which says that your perception system needs to be correct or conservative from every location in a particular environment. So an environment here you can think of as a room, so different obstacles placed in different locations. And we want our robot perception system to be correct or conservative from every location in an environment. If that's true, then we assign a loss for your perception system of 0. If there's even a single location from which your perception system is incorrect, we assign a loss of 1. In practice, of course, we don't consider all locations. We have a finite number of locations that we use with a sampling-based motion planner. And then we perform conformal prediction with this robust perception error. And we do this across many different environments. So ultimately, the statistical guarantee that we get is that with high probability over environments, so with probability 1 minus epsilon in a new room, your calibrated perception system is going to be correct from all locations. So it's a robust guarantee across states, but a probabilistic guarantee across new environments. So what this allows us to do is we can take the bounding boxes that are output by our calibrated perception system, and we can then intersect them. So we can aggregate information over time by taking intersections. And we're guaranteed that with high probability in some new environment, these intersected bounding boxes contain the true bounding boxes. And then we can combine this, so combine the bounding boxes that we get with any safe real-time motion planner. So any method from Jaime's paper, for instance, that guarantees safety, given these estimated bounding boxes, will then allow us to provide an end-to-end guarantee on the safety of the entire system with the perception system with a planner as well. So in practice, we use a particular sampling-based motion planner that takes into account the known free space, the estimated occupied space, and the unknown space as well. And it ensures safety by avoiding the inevitable collision set that's coming from our calibrated perception system. So this kind of combined perception plus planning system gives us the statistical guarantee. So with high probability, we're guaranteed to remain safe in some new environment. So we performed lots of experiments, so 30 different trials in many different scenarios with different chairs placed in random configurations in our lab. And these are showing just a couple of videos, just to give you a sense. So on the right is our method, so PwC, perceive with confidence. This is the conformal prediction-based approach that takes into account closed-loop distribution shift. On the left is a method that doesn't account for distribution shift, and we find that it often leads to collisions. And this is a first-person view. These are the bounding boxes that are coming, inflated bounding boxes coming from our calibrated perception system, and these are the raw videos. And these are the estimated free space estimations that are coming when we aggregate information over time as the robot moves around in a given environment. And across these 30 environments on hardware, so we saw significant reductions in the collision rate compared to this baseline method that also uses conformal prediction but doesn't account for distribution shift. It just gives you a statistical guarantee on the average locations that your robot will encounter. The misdetection rate also significantly goes down. Of course, there's no free lunch, so we give up a little bit of performance. So there's a loss in the percentage of times that we reach the goal, so we act a bit more conservatively. And the path length that our robot follows is also a bit longer than if you were using the baseline method. So that's the price that we pay for this statistically guaranteed safety that comes from conformal prediction. Okay, so just to conclude here, I've presented some work we've been doing on rigorous uncertainty quantification in the context of LLM-based planners, and also doing uncertainty quantification for pre-trained perception models. And I think one really nice feature of these methods is that they provide calibrated uncertainty quantification. So by calibrated, I mean calibrated in a frequentist sense. So this is different from kind of Bayesian uncertainty quantification methods that are not calibrated in a frequentist sense. So by calibrated here, I mean, let's say you say that I'm going to be successful, I'm going to remain safe with 90% probability. If you actually run your robot thousands of times or millions of times, you'll see that your robot is successful with that threshold that you specified. And that's not something that we get with Bayesian techniques. And these are some initial steps. I think there's still a lot more to do, but initial steps towards uncertainty quantification and formal assurances for foundation models in robotics. So if you're interested in learning more about these challenges, so I contributed to a review article that was led by Max Schwager's group on foundation models in robotics, and we outlined some of these challenges and other challenges as well. So feel free to take a look at this paper. And also our two papers that I mentioned today. So the work today was led by Alan Wren. So he's the one who led the work on language instructional planning. And Anushri Dixit, who was a postdoc in our group and recently joined the faculty at UCLA. She led the work on perception errors along with May and Megan. I think that's all I had. So I'll end with the conclusion slide and take any further questions you have. Thanks.